Hello, everyone. My name is Geoffrey Bowden. I'm the General Secretary of the European Union of Associations of Translation Companies. That's the EUATC for short, along with my colleague Inka Verheugen, who's a Senior Policy Officer at the European Commission. I'll be co-moderating this webinar, which is a Translating Europe workshop. Now, I hope the entire webinar is going to be available in French, German, Italian, and Spanish. If you look at the screen now, which I shall share, you'll see these icons. Click on the globe icon on your laptop or your computer if you want to hear it in German, Spanish, French, or Italian. If you want to ask questions and comments, I do encourage you to do so. We will be monitoring all these. Use the question mark icon in the Q&A icon. The purpose of this event is to share the results of the 13th edition of ELIS, the European Language Industry Survey. The main presentation will be followed by a panel session with representatives from the ELIS partners, plus, and this is an innovation, 2 students representing the language industry's next gen. The webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link to access it after the event. You'll also be able to download the results slide deck and, most importantly, the report, which will be available from the ELIS website. Anyone needing a certificate of attendance should email me at secretary@euatc.org. And now, to kick off this webinar, it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Christos Ellinides, Director General for Translation at the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Translating Europe workshop. This afternoon, as Geoffrey said, we will go over the results of the 13th European Language Industry Survey, or as it is called, ELIS 2025. The ELIS survey remains a genuine, in my opinion, pan-European, cross-country, collaborative initiative. It is important, I think, to take time out from our daily schedules and talk about industry trends, the challenges, but also potential opportunities that we are being confronted with. Before we have a look at the results of the survey, I would like to take a few moments to thank all of the associations and organizations involved in this survey. Start, of course, with the European Union of Associations of Translation Companies, EUATC, especially Heike, Geoffrey, and Rudy following up, and Inka from my team. The European Language Industry Association, the European Commission Masters in Translation Network, EMT, the European Regional Center of the International Federation of Translators, the Globalization and Localization Association, the European Commission's Language Industry Expert Group, LIND, and last but certainly not least, Women in Localization. Many thanks in advance also to all the panel members, Sean, Alexandra, Diego, Alison, Jill, Valentina, and Alexander. Of course, we should not forget that we have some young students who hopefully are now providing interpretation from English into French, German, Italian, and Spanish. A big thank you to all of you too. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the recent developments in Europe, America, and the Middle East are really reshaping our geopolitical context. And in fact, they are redefining alliances. Decades-old certainties are put into question as we speak. Marking the first 100 days of the new Commission last week, our President, von der Leyen, spoke of crumbling certainties and the lightning speed of change. And we still, don't forget, have a brutal war raging at our borders. Scenarios which just a few years ago would belong in the sphere of fiction now fill the news bulletins and social media posts in an ever-relentless news cycle that we are all experiencing daily. But despite these turbulent times, we see the rise of new technologies offering limitless opportunities in a whole range of professions and industries, including the language industry. Of course, at the same time, they can pose a challenge to our traditional ways of work and also how we do business. No professional sector is fully immune from the rise of artificial intelligence. Honestly, I hear a lot of chat and talk about specifically the translation and interpretation industry, but I do not agree that creative and intellectual occupations, such as translation and interpretation, are more exposed to whatever changes the AI revolution may bring. These changes are important to all of us, but especially to the future generations, and they affect all of us. One of the highlights of my year as a Director General here in DGT is announcing the winners of our Juvenes Translatores competition. This is a competition for teenage translators, and the competition begins every November, every year, with over 3,000 teenagers from across the EU and more than 700 schools participating. And the task is to translate a page of creative writing into a contemporary subject from any one of the EU's 24 official languages into any of the other 23. Their efforts are then assessed by professional translators, and we identify the best translation from each country. The 27 winners, one from each member state, are then invited to an award ceremony in Brussels. And I can tell you that the joy, enthusiasm even, and the European spirit expressed by these promising translators always encourage me and provide what this generation calls a feel-good moment that gives me real hope for the future. I wonder whether among these young people, there are future colleagues waiting to join DGT or any other organization in the language industry 10 or more years down the line once they have completed their university studies. But like many of them, and many of us here today, I also wonder what my organization, what DGT and the language industry will look like a decade from now. What will language jobs look like? What will language technologies and AI tools look like? How will translators adapt to a transformed profession? The ELIS survey addressed some of these questions. So, like every year, today is the opportunity to take the pulse of the language industry, get the lay of the land, and assess both opportunities and challenges. I must say we also achieved a good response rate this year, over 1,300 responses, representing a mix of independent language professionals, language service companies, language departments from various organizations, universities, and students. I believe the results give us a true snapshot picture of the language industry today. Going back to last year's survey, that survey suggested that in the mind of most language professionals at the time, the use of AI in the industry was still in its infancy. If we fast forward just 12 months or so, and almost half of those professionals are now saying they use AI for their daily work. Considering that more than half of independent professionals and language companies now say that they use machine translation as well, it is not an exaggeration to say that the industry has reached a tipping point, a point where we can actually see a structural shift in the profession. For independent language professionals, the increased use of technology continues to squeeze pricing. The falling price rates mean that they are questioning whether the language industry can continue to provide to them financial stability. Consequently, the confidence in the industry is now low and declining. Only few respondents expect the situation to improve in the near future. In many respects, the survey has uncovered a fairly bleak sentiment. University translation departments continue to report a squeeze on resources and the lack of staff. Young people choosing which subjects to study are increasingly unsure whether languages are for them or whether the language industry will provide them with a career in which they can succeed, they can flourish. Those who do choose to study languages are still keen to work in the language industry after graduating, especially in language service companies and institutional language services. But the lack of internships in language service companies and cuts in recruitment are an issue, and we cannot deny it. With most survey respondents reporting freezes in recruitment or decreases in staffing levels, the future for career opportunities in either the private or the public sector is perhaps not as bright as it was in the past. Future growth will probably be seen in language technologies, including AI, on the sales, marketing side of the business, or other language-related activities, editing and so on, rather than in traditional linguistic roles. All the trends in the industry are also mirrored within our own house here in DGT. Technological developments continue to drive my organization. The impact we have with the service we deliver, but also the need for us to adjust and revamp our product portfolio and services. So early last year, I launched a process to reconfigure and restructure my own organization, DGT, so that we can still remain relevant and continue to provide an added value within the broader context of our clients, within the broader context of the Commission. On the 1st of October of 2024, so a few months ago, we deployed this new organizational setup and repositioned DGT within the Commission environment. And we did exactly, in my opinion, what every organization should be doing: remain alert and adjust our business model within a constantly evolving environment. What did we do? Some highlights. First, we established a standalone directorate for technology with 4 separate units to tackle each and every aspect of the ongoing technological achievements and advancements. One unit, of course, continues to support the traditional legacy CAT and other IT applications, CAT systems and other IT applications, but a second fully dedicated unit develops and manages our AI-based multilingual services, while a third one deals with data management and ensures that we are able to maintain language sets that we can use to produce what I refer to as an institutional EU large language model, LLM, a model which, by the way, we will make available as open source for those of you that want to use it when it's up and running. We have a 4th unit also dealing with business analytics and statistics, so that completes the whole, if you like, moving forward with this new Directorate of Technology. But we are also having an impact on the whole of the European Commission by leading an AI network of colleagues here in the Commission, a community focusing on the practical implementation of AI-based solutions throughout the Commission with concrete use cases. Within DGT, we're also currently piloting an AI enhancement feature to make our e-translation system even more powerful. New AI-based services are streamlining the way we deliver. Outside DGT, we have developed a number of other services for use not only by EU institutions, but also by national administrations, academia, small to medium enterprises, and non-governmental organizations. For example, we have an e-briefing service that takes much of the laborious background research out of drawing up briefing papers, and our AI-based e-summary service generates targeted summaries using documents provided by the user, all within a very highly secure environment. That sums up our approach at the Commission. Our policy is and has always been to embrace new and emerging tools when appropriate, to replace, if you like, the fiddly, repetitive parts of the job as far as possible. In other words, we are thinking, let's outsource the legwork to technology, while drawing on the essential skills of our translators and editors and other language professionals we have to provide the human and creative touch and that value where they can really make a difference. Establishing a technology pillar within DGT is really part of our response to the trends that have been sweeping the industry the last few years. What is also a fact is that a lot of translators are now actively contributing to all our technological developments, while at the same time maintaining their translation capacity. An upskilling process that I consider very necessary for any language professional. But people are still at the heart of DGT. Translation still remains a fundamentally human process. So our number one asset has been and will always be our translators. Part of our restructuring includes also, apart from the technology pillar we set up, we also reviewed and revamped the services we provide based on the customer needs, based on the evolving customer needs. For example, I initiated a whole new approach to deliver new editing services as another prime example to address these new requirements and needs, to reposition ourselves within the customer environment that we're operating. We have also developed a new customer relations management approach that takes into account our changing environment and responds fast to the needs of our customers. Needs that revolve around clear writing, improved drafting, concise and accurate narratives, and so on. We have also reorganized and repositioned our demand management and outsourcing functions, which are essential components of the service. And we are midway in the development of a fully fledged, integrated, and streamlined workflow management system that corresponds to these new ways of working. And the list of initiatives and actions we took to reconfigure and reposition DGT goes on. In short, we have invested in various initiatives to create what I call a new profile for DGT so that we can continue to have a value for our customers. Reconfiguration and repositioning of our service was a non-negotiable approach as a response to what is happening around us. This said, DGT is not immune to the trends affecting the language industry as a whole. And just as in the wider language industry, we have seen falling recruitment over recent years. This means that over time, as our staff retires or leaves the service, the size of our units is shrinking, while at the same time, the average age of our staff is rising. In response to this, we also changed the ways we recruit and train staff. When we do recruit, candidates' technological savviness and their ability to use language tools are increasingly important criteria, alongside, of course, their traditional language skills. The traineeships we offer, we take about almost 100 trainees every year in 2 batches every 6 months. These traineeships we offer to university graduates now include every aspect of the digital skill sets that they will need for their future careers, alongside the basic grounding in the nitty-gritty of translation. We have revolutionized the training we give to our existing staff as well. Courses on AI and the full range of digital skills are taking center stage alongside the traditional language courses. While languages stay the same or develop slowly, technology is evolving at a staggering pace. This means that the skills our translators arrive with at the start of their career may not be enough for them to do their job a few years down the line. So, career-long learning is one of our top priorities. especially in this rapidly changing world. We don't want anyone left behind. The only certainty in life, ladies and gentlemen, is that sooner or later, our tried and tested, comfortable ways of doing things are going to change. And this is true for the language business as much as for any other professional area and industry. Looking backwards with regret is not an option. Instead, it is time to look forward and strive to confront challenges head on. It is time to convert challenges into opportunities. AI-based technologies are here to stay. And I am not talking only about machine translation. And there is a whole lot of other technological developments alongside that. Technological advancements cannot be seen as challenges anymore, in my opinion. We need to look at them as potential opportunities. And don't forget that resilience is built in the translation profession. Time and again, the language industry not only embraced change, but made it work for us. Therefore, the challenge for independent language professionals, language service companies, and public sector language providers, just like DGT, is to harness change, innovation, and new technologies, and make the most of the extraordinary new opportunities that they present. My motto these days is a triple R. It is time to reconfigure, restart, and reposition ourselves. Now, not that long ago, before AI, the internet, or even the widespread use of computers and the work of translators at the Commission was very different. Huh? When they needed to refer to an old archive or directive or regulation, for example, they would have to pore over old copies of the EU official journal on microfiche, then copy out the extract by hand, dictate it into a dictaphone, and then send the tape to a pool of typists to record it. And each time a new version of the document arrived, new pages had to be retyped, often several times, before a final version was produced. Now, today's translation tools render this painfully slow process unthinkable. And few translators, trust me, miss it. Perhaps in 20 years' time, we will look back on our work in 2025 and be thankful that the AI and whatever innovations it may bring have made our work more efficient. One thing is certain, however much our tools evolve and whatever changes the AI revolution may bring, the elements which real people bring to the table will continue to be essential. However efficiently a generative AI-based system works, it cannot understand a text the way a person understands it. Only a person has the life experience to instinctively grasp what another human being really wanted to say, and the subtlety and the grace to translate that successfully and elegantly into another language. It is your professionalism, creativity, and talent, in short, your humanity, which gives an added value to everything that you do. And this year's survey provides plenty of food for reflection, so I am confident that this will be a very successful and productive webinar. Once more, thank you for your participation and for your contributions. But we should not bring our discussions to a close at the end of today's event. Today is designed to be about exchanges of views and stimulating our thoughts. We need to keep the conversation going. So thank you so much for your attention. I really look forward to the presentation of the results of ELIS 2025 and then to the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christos, for your message of resilience, humanity, and hope. I think it's much needed during these times. We also got a comment for you, Christos, about the importance of DGT internships. I cannot agree more. And we also profit immensely from the trainees we get. And I know this personally as a mentee. So thank you thank you also for the programs and the students. Now I would like to first say that we are still working on the interpretation, so keep calm. We are going to restore it. I think some of the languages are working at the moment, but
Creo que algunas cabinas ya están funcionando, pero os pido por favor que tengáis paciencia.
we are getting the interpretation here, but thank you very much. That was very nicely interpreted. So now I will give the floor to Rudy and the survey report itself. So Rudy is the EUATC
Ahora mismo le
researcher.
vamos a dar la palabra a Rudy,
Can you please, I'm hearing
investigador de este informe.
Yes, please at the back end. We are hearing the interpretation. At least I'm hearing the Spanish interpretation. So I'm giving the floor to Rudy. So he's going to start off the report presentation, and then there will be some others. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you, Inka-Lisa. I'm going to share the presentation now. Okay. Can someone confirm that you're seeing it?
Yes, perfect, Rudy.
Okay, thank you very much. There's 4 of us who will be doing this presentation. I will start with the general slides, a few slides about the general market evolution for all the segments. Then afterwards, Diego Cresceri will follow up with the section on language companies and language departments, followed by John O'Shea from Fit Europe, who will take the part on independent professionals, the freelancers. And finally, Alexandra Krause will close off the presentation with the part on universities and students. So let's dive into the market evolution. First, one small remark. You will see a lot of charts on the screens. When it comes to market evolution, these charts typically show the difference between companies or participants in general who report an increase and those that report a decrease. So the evolution that you see or the levels that you see on screen are not absolute figures. It's not, for instance, a percentage of increase, but a percentage of people who are reporting an increase. Oops, one too much. First, let's look at the market as a whole. As Mr. Ellinides already said, we're seeing a negative evolution. We saw it already last year, but this year it deepens. It's the first time that language companies are also predicting a lower activity as a whole in the whole language industry, not just their own activities, where also the freelancers report that, but language companies also report a lower activity in the global market. This is also this matches the predictions or the reports of other market researchers, like those of Nimsy and Slater, third-party research, where they see a similar situation. Now, it is important to keep in mind that ELIS represents primarily the opinions of independent professionals and small and medium-sized language companies, and not that much those of the really very big enterprises. So that is something that is a little bit underrepresented in ELIS results, but overall, apparently, they match. Now, the language departments and the universities are still more optimistic about the language industry as a whole, although they too are suffering from the new developments, mainly through budget restrictions and staff restrictions. Obviously, when the market goes down, then we see that effect also in other areas, not just the revenues or the income levels, but also staffing, financial stability, budgets, and so on will go down as well, and we see that confirmed in the results. Not surprisingly, this all leads to a very negative sentiment. Traditionally, ELIS monitors that sentiment through investment opinions or investment plans. And when you look at the rightmost column in the table, 2025, you see at the bottom that we are at a really the lowest figure in country average, the lowest figure that we've had since 2018, which obviously is not a pleasant message to bring. On the other hand, you also see a lot of gray in there, which means that there are quite a few countries where there are not enough replies to these questions to draw a representative conclusion. That is important to keep in mind. When we're talking about M&A, because mergers and acquisitions, this is obviously a hot debated topic in a lot of discussions. We see that this sentiment has not dramatically changed. There's more a selling sentiment more rather than buying. But we also see this year that the intentions that were expressed last year are converted to actions. 12 of the respondents are actually currently involved in an M&A transaction, which is much more than we saw previously. In terms of income levels for the LSC respondents, which are 70% business owners, even those business owners are not satisfied with their own income levels. And obviously that is also matched by the freelance participants, the independent professionals. You see that chart on the right-hand side. That image is not pretty. The evolution is negative since 2022. And we hope that this is not going to continue like that. Especially the confidence in long-term sustainability of their freelance profession has dropped dramatically. And last year, we still had the most junior segment that was still quite optimistic that on the longer term it would be a good career for them. This year, they too are more in a pessimistic mode. When we look at the trends globally, there's actually only one trend. It's easy to report. It's AI, AI, AI. And if it's not AI, it's MT. All the other trends are now reduced to a secondary role. Means that technology and trends are completely converging. It's actually a very generic feeling that there's a perfect storm going on, in the sense that we have geopolitical crisis, we have economic turmoil, and that incites enterprises, companies, and institutions to save money. And at this moment, there is this new technology, AI, that seemingly gives them the possibility to do so. Unfortunately, with the known effects on industries like the language industry. As I said before, language departments have a more neutral view. They do see that there is a problem for, especially in the language industry with AI. But they also see that this new technology is giving them quite some advantages and that they need it for their own requirements. Gen AI is already implemented in quite a lot of universities, 44% of the staff report that, but the actual use is much lower. So that is also important to keep in mind. There's a big difference between the level of implementation and the actual use. We have been monitoring the actual use of machine translation over the last few years. This year is the first one where it exceeds the 50% mark of professional translation work. So that is important. It's a tipping point for the translation world. MT is used in more than 50% of professional projects. So basically, one could ask the question after these quite negative messages, is a career in this industry still a smart choice? We've seen that students prefer a career in a language-centric role, whether it is in the language industry itself, or in an institution, or a public institution, or another type of enterprise, is less important. And the most important is that its language-centric role. But that type of role actually is diminishing in both in the language departments and in the language companies, and also in the freelance profession. Actually, 23% of the freelancers have indicated that they are considering leaving the industry, so that's already an indication. There obviously will be recruitment. There's always restaffing going on because people are retiring or leaving an industry, and they have to be replaced. But it will be less than before. So yes, it will be difficult. Stepping into the language industry today is going to be difficult. It will require a lot of commitment, a lot of determination, and certainly a keen eye for what the industry is needing. That is obviously good tech savviness, a level of specialization that is probably higher than what people expect when they are graduating. So that's important. And to make the difference with AI and other technologies, an extreme focus on quality and an extreme focus on client service. That is going to be required. So this is my part for the generic section. Let's move to the language service companies now. And I give the floor to Diego Cresceri, but I think I first I'm going to share, stop sharing for the second and move to Diego in that case.
Okay, thank you, Woody. And I see the presentation perfectly. I hope you hear me well. As Christos and Woody already we presented in a very clear way.
Yes, perfect.
You can hear me. There was a yes. Okay. The industry is indeed living significant shifts that are influenced by technological advancements, and you mentioned that many times, also evolving client expectations. In my part, I will explore how this is impacting company size. In case of language service department, will be department size, how it's impacting revenue streams, and I would say overall industry health among language service companies. I think this is really an important moment where we owners of LSPs need to be focused and understand these dynamics. Decision makers needs to be very focused and The professionals that want, to navigate these difficult times, they will need to be really focused on understanding what is happening. And you presented an already a dramatic, I would say, change that is happening. I will need to ask you to move to the next slide. Thank you. So this one is where we analyze the LSC's size and performance. As you can see, there's a very notable decline in the size of language companies. There's a big shift from the past, where we used to see a growth. Rudy, you mentioned that already. Out of the company that replied to the survey, 90 of them have reported a substantial decline in revenue. The average is 19%, which is of course a big loss in revenue. 33 respondents have observed a growth. In this case, the average is 16%. And of course, if you take this data together, it means that there is a negative trend that is reflecting both global and local language markets. And it results, I mentioned that already, in reduced staffing and decreasing investment activities. This could mean that there will be some consolidation happening. Rudy mentioned that 12 companies are already discussing M&A activities, or at least we will need language service companies. We will need to adjust our operations. We need to implement different strategies that are more adaptive. We need to find new revenue sources. And I want to mention that Christos mentioned already different ways we can provide value to our customers. And this is how he's doing with DGT in a very specific way. We need to work on optimizing how we manage our companies, operational flexibility. And of course, we also need to kind of slow down maybe with investments and have a more cautious approach to investments, because the market is indeed very uncertain. Rudy, if you could move to the next one, please. Okay, so this goes more in details about challenges and reactions that are happening in the industry. I will not go through all the data, otherwise it will take forever. Just to give you an overview. As we said, language service companies are facing growing pressures for technological disruptions. Of course, this has to do with artificial intelligence, but also, again, with changing client behaviors. Our clients, whether they are big multi-language vendors or they are end customers, are changing what they need and what they are asking us to do. All of the respondents are anticipating a really deep industry transformation that is, of course, again, driven by automation and AI. Traditional translation services are expected to shrink, which can be a danger, a concern for small companies and freelancers, while big companies, which are not very well represented in this survey, I would say, they might flourish by setting them and occupying niche markets. There is something that you can see in this data, that despite these predictions, despite the fact that language service companies are predicting a shrink in the traditional translation service part of their business, we again, in general, language service companies, we are still reacting to what is happening, to these changes, with very conventional responses, like we are intensifying sales efforts, we are working on our internal costs. So there's basically a disconnection between what we are aware of, which is traditional translation is shrinking, and where we are putting our efforts to make our companies future-proof. What companies now need to do, and it's pretty clear, is that we need to innovate strategically. We need to embrace diversification of our services. And as I said, we need to adapt our business models to keep up with the changes and to be able to succeed in this market that is evolving very quickly. Rudy, please. Okay, thank you. So again, I already mentioned that there is an awareness, very specific awareness on where we think there will be growth and market performance. Companies are planning growth in areas that are familiar to us rather than really exploring new market opportunities. For instance, post-editing services have demonstrated the weakest performance in 2024, but we are still prioritizing that kind of service. National business is still strategic, but is giving disappointing returns. On the other side, strategic sectors such as corporate communication, legal services are performing better. So this is good news, suggesting that, aligning what we want to do, our growth strategies, with data rather than what we think is going to happen, is for sure bringing better results. The companies that are performing well typically have strong direct relationships. We already mentioned that it's important to communicate with our customers, whereas those heavily reliant on, subcontracting through larger companies are really facing the biggest challenges in achieving growth. So this is pretty clear in the data here, and you can see all the graphs. Thank you. I didn't even have to ask. This is the last slide on language service companies. As we've been saying, first Christos, then Rudy, and then myself, artificial intelligence has had a very deep impact on language service companies, and 60% are reporting negative effects generally, primarily due to, of course, the reduced rates. And for some months, I lived that on my company as well, clients were kind of uncertain where to invest. However, those who successfully integrated AI technologies, they are starting, I would say, to experience benefits, have an increased efficiency, saving costs, and they have been able to add new service offerings. But despite these positive experiences, there are many companies that still remain unfamiliar with typical AI-specific roles and how to best leverage them. And this is still a problem. AI implementation for other departments in language service companies that are not directly related to translation is really limited, which means also that there is some potential that can be freed and that is still not tapped. To fully use and capitalize on AI benefits, language service companies must invest in training, of course. They might find new ways, for instance, of pricing their services, and they need to be able to really present in the best way the value proposition of their AI-based services to our customers. That's the only way where we can reduce uncertainty and really leverage the advantage of AI that AI can offer. Thank you, Rudy. Thank you. Okay. So now we'll be talking about language departments, meaning departments that take care of translation in a very broad way in end customers on the buyer side. As Rudy mentioned already, the role within these organizations is also rapidly evolving. It's been influenced by But the same reasons that we language service companies are affected, there are structural changes and really strong strategic shifts in management practices as well. There are different challenges that language departments need to navigate, including staffing, budgeting, and of course, technological integration. This is valid also for them, which is of course crucial to support global operations. These departments now more than ever need to require a very strategic positioning within their organizations to maximize their impact and their effectiveness and how they are considered by the management. Moving to structure, thank you, Rudy. There's been in language departments a considerable restructuring, which is resulting in a market decrease when we talk about average unit sizes from 128 to 82. And this is a big decrease, of course. This is partly stemming from organizations shifting their focus towards a more national operation structure rather than international, but there are also some significant downsizing efforts in both the public and the private sector. And the reduction in department sizes, of course, is raising concerns about the future capability of these departments to address the complexity and volume of linguistic demands. This is growing, so it looks like counterintuitive. Additionally, there is sort of dispersal of language-related responsibilities across different units, which is also adding a complexity layer to how language departments are working. This approach can lead to inefficiencies and inconsistent service delivery. Again, language departments are also struggling, and there is a need for better integrated management structure where language is really playing an important role and the important role it deserves. Thank you. So evolution and challenges within language departments. As I said, language departments are facing ongoing challenges, shrinking staff numbers and shrinking budgets. There's a lot of pressure on them. And it's expected that these issues will intensify further, affecting their capacity to meet the demands from the overall organization. The data highlights an increasing gap between the workload and the resources that are provided to these departments. And of course, this can only increase the pressures on them. Recruiting qualified and specialized staff is becoming harder and harder. And this reflects both the market competition for skilled linguists and the budget constraints. Additionally, departments are facing increased concerns around data security, which is also important, and Christos mentioned that already. And because, of course, language operations frequently have to do with handling sensitive and proprietary information. There's a need to integrate advanced technologies and artificial intelligence, machine translation, of course, even if it seems something for the past. But there are also opportunities to increase efficiency and ask for bigger investments in these departments. It's only by addressing these issues that, including careful planning, innovative resource allocation methods, that language departments can face this situation that is putting pressure on them. Now to the last one about the language departments. Now we're talking about outsourcing and operational practices. The survey respondents show that outsourcing within language departments is kind of stable, but is varying in a significant way by sector. Private companies have restored outsourcing levels to those we've seen 3 years ago in 2022, while international public agencies continue to reduce outsourcing. Talking about certification practices have also shifted there are less and less departments on the client side, let's say, that are requiring ISO 17100 certification, the translation certification, which means also that there is a different perception about what quality is. And I believe this is really important. Additionally, the limited use of raw machine translation output to external vendors highlights that differing operational standards between language departments and language service companies is becoming an issue as well. There's a sporadic collection of internal feedback suggesting that this is an area for improvement to ensure quality and alignment within with internal stakeholders, which, as I said, is becoming more and more important to limit the pressure that these departments are facing at the moment. Thank you, Rudy, for operating the slides. In case you have any questions, I want to say I'll be here to answer if I can. And now, if I'm not mistaken, now it's John's turn. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diego, and thank you, Rudy, as well, for switching the slide over. So, as Rudy and Christos already said earlier, independent language professionals have reported negative growth in 2024 overall. So that means that, unfortunately, like last year as well, I have to be the bearer of some bad news. So I'm going to be using quite a lot of negative adjectives in my presentation today. So we already heard Rudy say there was a drop in confidence about the profession. Some people are losing hope. There's definitely a feeling of pessimism. A lot of people expect the translation activity to stagnate in 2025. In some ways, we could say there's a worsening situation overall, but I don't want to paint this as a picture of total gloom and doom, because for the negative stories that we see emerging from the data, and especially from the open text questions, we also see positive stories where people are managing to attract more direct clients to continue to preserve their earnings and so on and so forth. And this is something that is quite normal and expectable in a large data set like this, that you will have these internal contradictions. So if we look then to the right-hand side of the screen, as with every year, we, in the independent professional section of the survey, look at what is stressing independent professionals out. And what we're seeing is an overall picture year on year of an increase in these stress factors. These, of course, can be combined together into, or bundled together into, what you might call major stressors. So pace of technological change combined with the rise in machine translation AI, combined with pressures on rates and combined with having to cope with the cost of living crisis, paints this perfect storm of stress for the individual translators and interpreters who responded to the survey. One interesting thing that we've seen, and it emerged a bit last year as well, is that relationships with project managers inside LSCs seems to be somewhat improving. So what we're seeing overall is a quite difficult situation. It's not that radically different, I would say, from the last few years. It's quite a similar picture. And of course, since we're seeing this consistency in translators feeling stressed about their working practices, about not earning enough, so on and so forth, the question transforms into, okay, that's the situation. What can we do to respond to this from now on? And in effect, what we're seeing in the responses from the independent professionals are two major categories of response. And one of those is fight. So people are adding new services, developing new skills, increasing their level of specialization, things which Rudy and Diego have both alluded to as well. And another major reaction is flight. And I think Rudy mentioned this as well. So we are seeing for the first time ever the stickiness of the profession. And by stickiness, I mean that people want to stay. When they join the translation or interpreting professions, they want to stay. They quite like this type of work. they join it because they're into languages and so forth, and they don't want to consider leaving it. But now we're seeing that fundamental idea of the stickiness of the profession being challenged, because this year, for the first time ever, we see 23% of the independent professionals saying that they're considering leaving. And if we look deeper into the data, a lot of those people will be older professionals, possibly closer to the end of their career than to the start of it. And another interesting fact, which we saw in the responses as well, is that this ties into an increase in the number of respondents saying that they're not seeing any clear path to a sustainable future in the profession as well. And that's possibly why they're now considering exiting the profession. So can we move on to the next slide? Thank you. And again, every year in the freelance or the independent professional section of the survey, we look at the sectors that independent professionals are working in. And one thing that becomes quite clear from this year's results is that specialization in areas where nuance is required or where AI can be expected to perform weaker seem to correlate to higher earnings and higher revenues for translators. It's a very, very interesting observation that we see in the data. Different types of, and something else that we haven't explored before in the past, which is now the chart on the right-hand side, is like in the past we asked, like, do you work with LSCs or do you work with direct clients? And we know from past editions of the survey that around 40% or 2/5 of independent professionals were working with direct clients. But this year we decided to look in this in a more fine-grained manner, and we divided them into large direct clients, smaller direct clients, large LSCs, small LSCs, to try and see if there's any more interesting information in there. And one of the things we see is for independent professionals that there seems to be better working conditions. That's probably unsurprising with smaller direct clients. Also, something interesting that emerges is that older translators tend to have more direct clients than younger translators. Again, probably not surprising. Interestingly as well, because we asked a whole series of questions, which we're not presented here on the screen, but they are presented in great detail in the report about rates and negotiations and payment practices and so on and so forth, that it is easier to negotiate rates than it is to negotiate payment terms. Generally, also, it's easier to negotiate with smaller direct clients than it is with larger ones. And many independent professionals report that it's almost impossible to negotiate payment terms and conditions with large LSCs. That in reality, what large LSCs are doing is they are imposing their working terms and their working conditions and their rates on the independent professionals. This possibly raises several questions. Perhaps there's an issue of competition law that we need to be looking at here, and the exercise of dominant position. Another thing that for sure that we need to be looking at from that is the discussions that we had last year as well about fair pay and the amount of money that people are earning. And maybe we need to be re-examining the roles that associations on both sides have to play. So both the associations of translation companies and the associations of translators and interpreters. Because if individuals cannot be negotiating these things themselves, maybe they need to turn to their collective organizations to do that better for them. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Rudy? So also one of the things that we look at for the independent professionals is these questions of technological use. Again, Rudy, Christos, and Diego have all spoken about this as well. And the picture in relation to technology and technological tools is largely unchanged, I would say, for the independent professionals. What we do see in terms of a change is an increase in the usage of machine translation. And an interesting development this year is that there's a lot of independent professionals who are using machine translation on their own initiative. So it's not a requirement from the client, that they're opting to use it themselves. So they're possibly becoming more comfortable with the technology itself. And what we see from examining the open text questions and the responses that are provided to them is that a lot of translators do see it just as a tool to be used when and where it makes sense. But this is also accompanied by a concern that there's a reckless use of machine translation and AI on the client side, and that does not seem to be accompanied by an awareness of the risk of using these technologies. But having said that, if you look at which chart is it? The one on the top left-hand side of the screen, that translation memories continue to be the largest technology which is being used. They far outstrip machine technology still. And other traditional tools are quite highly used as well, like quality assessment tools, term bases, and so on and so forth. And this year, last year we had also asked some questions about AI, but this year we asked a lot more questions about AI. And what we see, and I think Christos alluded to at the beginning as well, is that AI is being used more frequently by independent professionals now. Some of them are using it as an alternative to machine translation, but the real fact is that we don't have enough clear data about how they feel about using it, whether they think it's better or worse than machine translation. So these are definitely questions that we need to be exploring in more detail in the 2026 edition of the ELIS survey. And one interesting point as well is that there is the difference between usage in the 2024 version and the 2025 version of the survey seems to be quite large. So translators are exploring and using AI much more than they were in the previous year. Can we move to the next slide, please? So now we come to a very critical issue for many interpreters and translators, freelance, independent professionals, the earning potential from the work that they do. And what we see here is a decline in the number of independent professionals reporting that they earn enough money from their professional practice. To be perfectly honest, we did expect that there would be a sharper drop in the figures this year, but it didn't happen. So we see a drop from 58% last year to 57% this year from people whether they're earning enough as a freelance translator or interpreter. And this picture of decline is quite consistent with other data that we see in the survey as well. It's consistent with this idea of a loss of confidence in the continued growth or recovery of the market. And what we see when we look particularly at the open text responses in the survey is that there's an expectation that the deployment and use of technology will continue to drive rates down. And this is very, very worrying for independent professionals. Of course, a career in the translation or interpreting sector is not just about what you earn, but it's also about the enjoyment of the work that you do. So every year in the survey, we explore attitudes and feelings towards the work-life balance. And out of all the segments in the overall ELIS survey, the responses from the independent professionals show that they are the least satisfied with the work-life balance. So people who work in translation agencies have a better work-life balance, or the satisfaction of the respondents is higher concerning their work-life balance than it is among the independent professionals. So we've already seen that the stress factors in a previous slide, but the actual conditions of work and the way in which translation is procured and the way people do their work affects these stress factors. So some of the issues that come up in the open text questions are long payment terms. So you do the work, but you have to wait months to get paid, enforced rate cuts, the fact that a lot of people find machine translation post-editing not to be an enjoyable activity. All these things affect the work-life balance and people's feeling of it. In some ways, you might even go so far to say that the free part of freelancer is facing challenges. People feel somehow trapped by the overall system and the way it has been structured and the way it works around them. In previous editions of the survey, one of the dominant feelings or sentiments that came across from the independent professionals was frustration. And I would say that in the 2025 edition as well, we see frustration as well. But this year it seems to be more tempered than before. There seems to be less anger associated with that frustration and more resignation. That perhaps this is an awareness that these are industry-wide challenges. So that there seems to be that shift in the sentiment. It's not quite as harsh as it was in previous years. And if I had to summarize this down into one sentence, I think it comes across that independent professionals do not feel in control of their own professional destiny. And this, I think, also ties into the responses that we had about the future sustainability of the profession. And to the point that Rudy mentioned at the beginning, which I also reiterated, that there's a sharp increase in the number of people saying that they are now considering actively leaving the profession. So we need, sorry, if we go back to the previous slide, Rudy. This also raises some other big questions because, and this is a point that Christos mentioned as well about the future translators, the young people entering the profession, about the students who are going to be joining the profession. We have these big questions to resolve now. How can we ensure that they will be able to earn enough? How can we ensure that they will stay in the profession, even if they join it, or that they will feel inspired to do the demanding work that translation and interpreting is? Can we move on to the last slide, please? So I've painted the picture with a lot of things that are going wrong in the translation and interpreting sector for the independent professionals. And one of the objectives that we had when we were developing this year's version of the survey was not just to identify what the problems are, but also to start thinking about, well, what are the potential solutions to these things? So on the left-hand side, you can see a lot of the issues which I've been alluding to. This concern about the indiscriminate or reckless use of AI and machine translation by clients, lower volumes of work, which is now also affecting LSCs, unfair rates, conditions dictated by large language service companies, and this concern about professionals perhaps leaving the market. So those are some of the issues, not all of them. But the question is, how do we react to that? And on the right-hand side, I have some ideas which emerge from the survey data about what could possibly be done. And this is what could be done by independent professionals. So finding more direct clients. But as we heard from Diego, LSCs also want to work with direct clients, so we can perhaps envisage there will be more competition over finding direct clients. Working in niche sectors, becoming more specialized. We heard those words from Christos as well. Learning how to set boundaries, how to negotiate better about rates and deadlines, honing your professional skills, becoming better at financial planning, so on and so forth. A key issue that comes across quite a lot in all the responses is networking and collaborating, possibly in the context of professional associations. And again, something which Christos mentions as well, learning how to utilize technology to become much more efficient. But those responses and what the individual professional can do by themselves are not enough to fix these massive big problems that I've outlined here. So we need to start asking questions, well, how are these problems going to be solved? What can translation associations do about this? What can associations of language service companies do about this? What can the policymakers do about this, like DGT and Christos, who's in the audience? So what we're seeing is a picture of all sides of the market being impacted and affected. There is now a common cause for all of us to come together and to try and fix things. This common cause, we've been exploring it in things like the language industry expert group and in the ELIS survey, where all parts work together every year. But now it's quite clear that there are serious problems and that something needs to be done about them. So we hope that in the next version of ELIS, that this approach of being more solution focused will inform the structure of the survey. And again, these questions around not doing it alone, not trying to fix these things on our own as an individual, but what the associations could do is something we'll come back to in the panel discussion. And I think also a bit later towards the end of the presentation of the results today. Thank you very, very much. And now I hand over to Alexandra.
So, thank you, John. I will now present some data from the university staff and student segments, comparing it partly with some other segments. Udi, thank you. In this slide, we see three charts, one about the market evolution, the other one about the students' expectations with regard to the market that Udi mentioned just before. But our data also captures the market evolution from the perspective of the university staff. And the third chart refers mainly to the academic evolution. And what we see is that there are relatively little changes compared to 2024. University staff have a more optimistic view of the market evolution than other stakeholders, in particular with regards to the market growth and pricing. We don't know why, because unfortunately, as we heard before, the current industry data do not support this expectation. So maybe it's also a bit due to the fact that the linkage between industry and academic staff is not so tight as it should be. But what we see clearly is that university staff report the same, if not worse, academic evolution as in 2024, especially the waning number of new students causes concern. Whenever I talk to colleagues from all over Europe, they all say that the numbers are decreasing in the BA and in the MA at the same level. So this is really something which is cause for concern. The challenges for the academic staff remain largely the same as in 2024, above all visibility of the profession and budget restriction. And these restrictions or concerns obviously also affect the work-life balance. And we had a question about the work-life balance, and the answers were not so encouraging. Students on their side are mainly concerned about their professional future, but finding internship is also an issue, and we will come back to internships in the last slide. For more details, please refer to the ELIS report 2025. Udi, the next slide, please. Thank you. Now we come to the student skills, one of the most important points that training programs in particular focus on. And there we have some important data. Language departments are most positive about credit skills levels than language companies. This could also be due to the fact that they have more training, in-house training maybe, than language companies. Teachers' scores are more in line with those of language departments, while student scores are remarkably close to those of language company participants, which was an amazing result for us. Teacher opinions about employer expectation match to a large extent the skill levels reported by language companies and departments. And this for us is really a positive evolution that indicates that translation programs are focusing on the right skills. So we've made a big progress in this. And there is another positive development. Language companies score translation technology skills considerably higher than in 2024, but there's always room for improvement, but for all these skills. And now coming to one slightly alarming result, project and information management score lower than average across all segments. And this is reason for concern, since these two skills will become even more important in the changing language industry in the future. So we have really to focus on those issues in training. Rudy, the next one, please. The last two statements lead us directly to the next slide, which relates to technology and professionalization. And here we see that all main types of language industry technologies are extensively implemented in the participating training institutes. We can only talk about the trainings institute who participated in our survey, mainly EMT training institutes. 44% of university staff report that generative AI is implemented, but students indicate that it is used only occasionally. This may depend on individual teachers, or this may reflect the general rules in the different departments, which may not be really implemented in teaching, because there is a discrepancy between what teachers believe and what students experience. The implementation of technology is consistently higher in universities belonging to the EMT network, with the exception of distant interpreting. There, the explanation could be that EMT universities have rarely mixed or genuine interpreting strands, so distant interpreting is not that issue for the EMT universities. And as for the professional preparation activities, university staff data show a similar EMT versus non-EMT difference, but this difference is contradicted by data provided by students, but the number of replies is not that high that there could be some deviations. One clear conclusion is that students rely massively on their teachers for information about the language industry. And to me personally, this last conclusion means that we need to foster the cooperation between academic staff and the language industry, so that teachers provide students with a realistic picture of the language industry. But at the same time, academics should be given enough time to do so. We had one question about this issue, how they deal with the language industry, and some academics stated that they don't have the time to deal with the language industry due to all other bureaucratic and teaching constraints. So maybe training institutes should really also give academics a chance to deal with the language industry from the time factor. The next slide, the last one. And in this edition of ELIS, we dedicated a whole set of questions to internships. Because internships are widely considered an important part of translation or interpreting program and an effective recruitment channel for the language industry, finding suitable internships still remains a challenge for students and teachers. And there's need to intervene. 1/3 of participating language companies and language departments do not accept interns, and another third does not accept international interns. And the motivations are lack of suitable work or support and regulatory restrictions. And this fact also requires the urgent intervention of all stakeholders. The different internship actors do not always agree about specific topics, such as structural agreements, duration, or financial compensation. I think these are issues we are talking about since several years. And that's why a language industry EMT university task force has already been set up by the DDT to clarify these issues. And the different internships actors do, however, agree, not all to the same extent, that internships are positive and a meaningful experience. This statement is further confirmed by the more realistic language market view shown by students who carried out an internship. That means that internships really provide students with a clear and realistic view of the language industry, and we all agree that they are very important. But for we had many more questions about internships, and we collected different data about internships, And there I would also like to refer you to the ELIS report 2025 on this topic. This was my part. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Yeah.
Okay. See if I can. Yeah, I'm back. Just a few final words in the presentation. What does the ELIS answers tell us actually? In a few words, we're going through a structural change. Actually, 3/4 of the participants confirm that. It's not something that will go away by itself. This is structural. Something is broken. And what is broken is actually the balance between technology and the human services. The solution to mend this break is not yet completely clear, but that this balance is broken is quite clear. We see that the small and medium-sized companies, as well as the independent professionals, are hit particularly hard by the evolution, much harder than the larger ones, or a specific segment which is also underrepresented in ELIS, which is the audiovisual translation market, especially large dedicated interpreting companies or subtitling companies, for instance. We see that language departments in universities are a little bit more positive, but they feel the impact too in their budgets, restrictions, the lower number of students, and so on. About the students, a really hopeful finding is that students are really realistic. They know what they are getting involved in, especially those who went through an internship, and they have much less than before unrealistic expectations. Now, John already mentioned what about language industry associations? What are they doing about this, the whole thing? And well, actually, the question is, what can they do, and what should they do, and what are the language providers are looking for? And they're looking for a number of specific things. First of all, guidance. How should they react? How can they react to the changes? And John already mentioned the things that independent professionals can do to improve their situations. Also, they do not always know with whom they can work together, how to network, how to cooperate. Before, networking and cooperation were nice to haves. Now they become lifesavers or profession savers. So they need an answer to that. They need information. They need to support how to reskill, how to upskill themselves, how to develop new activities, and how to change service focus. Not everybody knows that by themselves. And finally, they need clear and fair rules of the game. Especially for the independent professionals, that is extremely important, as we've heard from John. Yes, associations can and they do help. There's been, in the last few months, there have been a number of AI webinars that have been organized by different language associations, both national and international, including EUATC, FIT as well. So they are going on, especially FIT is organizing continuous training programs in most countries. Associations provide plenty of opportunities for networking and collaborations. Most associations have organized events, organized conferences where people can talk with each other, with peers, with other people from other segments, professionals, with language companies, with universities, with institutions. So that's perfectly possible. In a number of countries, there are cross-segment agreements in place. The one, in my opinion, that started it was Hungary, where there is an agreement in place between the Association of Freelance Translators and the Association of Translation Companies. So that kind of agreement is something that associations can create. And last but not least, associations, as John already mentioned, they have a duty to assist policymakers to create a good, fair, sustainable framework for the industry. A set of rules. Generic rules, obviously, we cannot go into too much regulatory rules, but something that is sustainable for the industry as a whole, not just for one segment. This is already going on in the language industry through the Lind Group, and also, as Alexandra mentioned, between universities and institutions, but this can certainly be intensified. Now, in the webinar, in the discussion after this, following this presentation, all these associations are presented. So I'm sure that some of the questions will be about those things. If you want more information about the associations, you can go through to their individual websites. And finally, I want to say a very special thanks, not only to the interpreters. I hope that in the end they were able to connect to their booths, but also to the student translators, to language companies, and the professionals who participated in preparing the multilingual survey forms of ELIS, which was not possible for all of them, unfortunately. We'll do our best next year to remedy that. But as you can see, there were quite a lot of people involved in this preparation. A very warm thank you to all of them. You can download, as Jeffrey already said at the beginning, you can download this presentation and the ELIS full ELIS 2025 report from the ELIS survey website, which is elis-survey.org. You have to register there if you have not done yet, so to get access to the repository. But there you will find this year's presentation and the report, as well as the reports of all the preceding years, starting from 2013. Thank you very much for listening to the presentation. And now I'm giving the floor back. I'm going to stop sharing the presentation. And I'm giving back the floor to Inka, Lisa, or Jeffrey for the start of the discussion panel.
It'll be Inka, Lisa first.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, and we will do this together, Jeffrey, right? So thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, and we will still have a lot to talk, and we will not end here. But let's talk about first impressions about the report. And I would actually like to start with our industry newcomers. So I'm talking about our EMT students from the EMT network. We have here from the Louvain School of Translation and Interpretation, a dynamic duo of Alexander Loves and Valentina Claude. So I give you the choice of who will start and kick off the discussion. But I would like to ask you, as we read in the slide from Rudy, that students are realistic. So this was the statement. Do you agree? Do you think you have a realistic picture of the language industry and about the perspectives it offers.
Valentine, do you
Alexander.
want to answer that?
Okay, I can. Thank you. Yes, I think we have, and even though the future seems a bit gloomy, I mean, it kind of confirmed what I had in mind before. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say that I agree. I think there's, ever since the beginning, there's always a bit of a sentiment that we know that we're getting into a profession that's not necessarily the easiest, maybe not necessarily the best paid, and so on. Also, a not protected profession, une profession non protégée, we say in French. I think we still do it because a lot of us, we like languages. That's what we're mainly good at. But I do believe the freelance translators who responded to the survey, 57% of them saying that they don't earn enough. I think a lot of the students are aware of that. Yes.
Thank you for those comments. I don't know whether it's appropriate just to give you there's been a poll going on in the background while we've all been talking. And I'm just doing the maths here because we've got 35% plus 19%. Well, there's a lot of people who are anxious. So 35% are anxious, 19% are not confident at all. At the other end of the scale, 10% are very confident that there will be a long-term lucrative career in the language industry, and 37% are comme ci, comme ça, not quite sure which way it's going to go. But I've been around this industry for so long. I remember where innovation was a dictionary on a kitchen table, and people said, "Oh, this is how to do it." And then every new innovation has created anxiety. And as Rudy said, 50% mark for machine translation has been passed. I wonder whether I could ask, because a lot of the survey is about this, what is happening in Europe, and I wonder whether I could ask Alison and Jill, who ply their trade on the other side of the pond, because there have been some geopolitical changes in the US, which inevitably will also impact on this side of the Atlantic, with talk of trade wars and all the rest of it. But how are the larger LSCs faring at the moment with the sort of changes going on in Washington?
I'll start. I mean, just to be clear, GALA is not a US-based organization, and 62%
no, of course.
of our 62% of our members are in Europe, so only 27% in the USA. We have heard some stories about impacts, about lost contracts, specifically lost government contracts. So to the extent that an LSC is working for the US government, those folks are feeling pain. I would say, to answer your question about the size, the large versus the small, there are two storylines, and I would say that truly in the end, it's a mixed bag, as we say. However, GALA did a global survey at the end of last year, and what we see is that larger companies are faring better. They're reporting stronger revenues and stronger profit, or less loss. And so I would say that the larger companies are doing better. They're going to feel less impact. That's true regardless of geopolitical situations. I think we may talk a little bit more about the size difference later, but Jill, over to you if you have any observations.
So speaking from and on behalf of Women in Localization, we too, our board and our members are all over, of course, the world. I can say that there has been, depending upon where you work in the industry, if you are involved in healthcare, that's been a huge with some of the things that have come out recently, politically, a little bit legally. We've seen some of those who work maybe in the legal side. I think more than anything, it's creating a lot of uncertainty. So more afraid, kind of holding back maybe some of the plans for whatever your, expansion or things that you want to kick off. You're not sure because from day to day, it's flipping right now. What we're getting in the news and in the political situation can change from day to day. And you can be like, oh, this is horrible. And then 2 days later, it's like, okay, this was pulled back. So I think number one, yes, it's more than anything. There's a lot of what's going on is creating uncertainty. Everything hasn't crashed, so to speak, right, just yet or anything like that. On speaking on behalf of some of the individuals who work in or on the board, we encompass everything from, those who own like their own agencies, right? To people who work for large LSCs, to small LSCs, to those involved in not-for-profits even in the industry. It's so broad, but I can say that to Allison's point one, I think the larger LSC are going to fare better unless they're maybe in a specialty that will be able to might have some more time to get ready and to implement what's going on, whether it's technologies or be able to deal with the Gen AI that's disruption, because it will influence some customers and clients more than others. And when it comes to specifically speaking to LSCs, I will say that the larger customers right now, in the good old days, you would be speaking, Jeff, you'd be like, these are huge accounts. This is great. They're the first ones to embrace the Gen AI and everything that's going on. And I've seen a real shift in that. And so having a broader client base and more diversified, I would say, is kind of the hope and kind of what people are trying to lean on right now, if that makes sense.
Thanks very much, Jill.
Sorry, it's long-winded, but
no, it's all good. Incalisa, I think you've picked up a couple of questions you wanted to put to our panel.
Yes. There has been a very active discussion on many things. I wanted to start with this point on AI. So there was a particular comment from, I think it's Johannes Purer, and he thinks that AI has set a negative tone, and regardless, we only talk about AI, and he is claiming that we should have more confidence, putting our foot down, and deal with the things. I see Diego already smiling. Do you want to comment on this?
I'm not smiling because of the comment itself, of course. I'm smiling. He's right. Okay, he's right. But I would argue that we are seeing every day newcomers to our industry that are claiming they are replacing us with AI. So the narrative is not coming from us only. It's coming from outside of the industry, and that's the biggest threat that I see. There are tech companies that have nothing to do with translation, that they have no language expertise within their companies, and they're coming and threatening our businesses. And if we don't talk about AI, and this is happening, it's pretty clear now that it's happening. If we don't talk about AI, I think that these guys from other industries will just come and replace us from one day to another. So it's not avoiding talking about AI that we are defending ourselves. We should rather talk with our customers and educate them so that they understand what value we can provide with our language expertise. That will be my answer.
Could I just follow up on another thing? Actually, it's our old friend Chris Durbin. Hello, Chris. Thank you for tuning in. She's picked up something you said during your section on LSCs, Diego, about certification has become less of an item. I have to say, the EUATC has been running a series of updates on ISO, and we've had just 3 updates. We've had 800 people tuning in, and there is still a thirst for knowledge. So I just wonder whether the survey, I mean, she's maybe I noted it down wrong. Only 29% of respondents require ISO 17100, which of course we know is going to be updated shortly. Is that your experience?
My experience is exactly that. We've been recently re-audited for ISO 17100 and the machine translation one, too long to pronounce, and the quality one, so 901. And today, one of my project managers asked me, do we already have the new certificates? And we don't have any interest from customers about the certification, from end customers. We only have that from other companies, other translation companies. The end customers are becoming more and more, and this is not necessarily bad, interested about the process rather than how you got, well, the product, sorry, the end results rather than the process. And I'm not sure this is necessarily a completely bad thing to happen, but that's exactly my experience. I saw Chris's comment, and you can see that at page 11, but I guess you are on it already.
Yeah. But I just wondered, I don't know whether Christos is still with us, but obviously there are a number of LSCs that have framework agreements with the Commission, and whether the Commission is looking for that kind of certification before they put their work to LSCs. Maybe if Christos has...
I am here, Jeffrey.
Right. I don't know whether that's still a requirement from the Commission for your external suppliers.
We are not necessarily registering in our call for proposals for tenders for those that want to work with us to have that certification.
Okay, that's not a requirement.
But of course, it's an advantage.
Of course. Okay, and I see Heike smiling very quietly in the background. Heike, you've got your hand up too. How very polite. Hello. Where are you?
Thank you so much. I can't totally agree here. I mean, we look into a very heterogeneous market, and translation is everywhere. But if you look at the big international corporations and their global procurement processes, here I really can confirm on that standards in general and the relevant ISO standards are still very, very important. I would say otherwise you won't be able to get any bigger volumes and orders. And so we still need all the certifications which relate to our translation and language industry processes. But I also would like to draw the attention on IT security, which is a much more important topic, and also certification labels. So like the ISO 27, I think 001, and also TISAX for the automotive industry. So yes, standards are definitely a very important factor. Also for auditing management in translation and language companies. So it's not just about the text quality, but also the service quality, the management quality. And as I think Chris Kurz mentioned that, sorry, Dr. Chris Kurz, Christopher Kurz, about the standard of the MT evaluation. So a lot of standards around, and they are really important. Thanks for that.
And before I bring Rudy in, I have to say the profile of the people who've been attending the first 3 of our webinars, there's another one, I think on the 24th of April, stand by for information. It's not just companies, it's individuals, freelance professionals are joining in, interpreters who want to know more. Rudy, you have a burning comment.
Well, burning, not really, but I want to confirm what Heike says. First of all, it's not everywhere. Not everybody's tuning down their requirements for certification, but it's something generic that we've seen in the data, and I think it has more to do with priorities than anything else. It's not that I think it's less important. It's simply that they think that other things are more urgent, and that's it, in my opinion. Now, the second thing where I completely agree with what Heike said, it's not just about the certification itself. It's about the whole process that you go through as a company to obtain the certification and the advantage that you get by doing so. By streamlining your processes and so on. So it's not just for marketing purposes, let's call it like that, but or to win a contract, but also to improve your own operations. And that's an advantage of especially 17100. That is not to be underestimated, I believe. And what you said about interpreters and translators who are joining the webinars about certification, it's logical because there's also certifications just for professionals. If you look at the ISO standard for legal translation, for instance, a company cannot certify for that. It's only the independent professional who can certify for it. So that's one of the reasons why they are also interested. And we've seen a few language departments who did require that. I don't remember the number exactly. John probably knows it, but I saw a number of them who required that specific certification.
Indeed, and we've had updates on certification for interpreters, interpreters' environments. All these things affect individual professional linguists. So I think ISO is still an important factor in people's lives. I don't know whether John wants to come in on that because he is a legal translator.
I can't remember the exact figure. I just know that it's one of the least used standards. It's important, but not a lot of people actually demand it or probably even know about it. And then not a lot of people are being certified for it, though it is an interesting standard.
Yeah.
And certainly my clients don't ask for it. So it maybe tunes into what Diego was saying. And also I saw one of the comments from Chris Durbin as well, like she's been working in the sector for so many years and her direct clients as well are not asking for certification.
Reputation counts for everything. You two have got such great reputations. Why would they ask for whether you comply with a standard? Is my thought on that. Let me just
the gold standard.
You are the gold standard, indeed. I just wanted to go back to the polls. There's a couple of other ones here. There was a question here. Have you seen cases of clients leaving because they thought AI would do the trick and then come back to the professionals when they realized it was problematic? We've got 27%. I lost clients, but don't know why. I definitely lost clients because of AI, 44%. And 30% says I offer post-editing and one new client. So people who adapt seem to be winning out. They seem to be adapting and getting new clients. But things will level out in the future, I guess.
Can I
Yes, please do. Come in.
Yes, bringing another topic because there's a lot of discussion and I've been monitoring it. And I would like to talk about, bring a topic that Andrea has suggested. Can we talk about opportunities that new technologies bring and the new profiles? And I think it's also interesting for our newcomers. So they are realistic, but what are the opportunities? So please, anyone who wants to bring their thoughts on this. Thank you.
Well, about that, I think that's actually one of the issues that I wanted to mention, is that although there are opportunities, and I saw in the survey said there's only one real trend, right? Rise of AI, machine translation, and other technologies. And I think Christos and Ellinides also mentioned that tech savviness, stepping into the industry now requires tech savviness, among other things. And I think the issue with that is that from something, if I can say this about the students that I personally know, that's not really the profiles usually of the students that decide to go into translation studies. They're really good at writing, they're great at languages, but they didn't necessarily expect that translation studies would require them to use all these technologies like Trados, Multiterm, DeepL, and so on. The profiles don't really seem to match, and the inherent interests of the people who start studies that I personally know don't really seem to match that, unfortunately. I see, Heike has her hand up.
Is it Heike?
Yeah,
Yep.
Also, Rudi, would you like to be first, Rudi? Or shall I just start? No, I just start.
I think it was a legacy hand, or was it?
No, I think it was a fresh hand. But Alexander, I think you made a fantastic point here. I'm very optimistic. So I personally think, and this is also something I can report from our national associations within EUATC and all the, also the small and middle-sized companies around. So being a good linguist doesn't necessarily conflict to be tech savvy. I'm totally convinced, and we can see that because it's not that all the companies are doing badly or see a loss in turnover. There are quite a lot of companies and also independent professionals who are doing very good business. But you have to be agile, you have to be adaptive, and you shouldn't hate tech because I think and AI isn't the enemy. We should embrace it, as Jill said. We should consider it being a team member, but still keep in mind that in the end, in order to tune a text for its purpose and what it ever should do and send out a message, then you will need, in the end, you will need a human being and a very, very good linguist. So I think all those who are not really passionate about languages, they will face a hard time. So I think we will lose those who are medium qualified. But if you love linguistics and if you love languages, please stay on board. We will need you all. And I see a bright future, actually. And just in combination with technology, we can't do without, none of us can. But there has to be a good balance. But I don't want to talk too long. I see a lot of hands raising, and my colleagues might have different opinions or be in line.
Could we get Oh, sorry, Rudy first, then
Yeah.
then Alison, and then John.
Actually, I totally agree with you, Heike. The only thing that I see is that it's going to be a challenge for universities, not that much for the students themselves. It's how you teach that combination of language and technology. How do you make it attractive and how do you position it as something positive rather than always bashing on AI and on MT? Because that's a change of mindset, in my opinion, and that needs to also penetrate in the first year in the bachelor and programs for university. It's not at the end of your university career that you suddenly make the switch from only translation to translation or tech savvy translation. You have to train that mindset from the start. It's if you can use ChatGPT to write a letter to someone in another language, then you can use ChatGPT or Mistral or whatever to help in translation work as well, or to help a client do certain things, because more and more translators will evolve into language consultants rather than pure translators. Okay, it's not going to happen in next year or the year after, but in the end, it will. For those who are students today, they will experience it without any doubt. So it's the sooner they embrace it, the better. That's all I have to say for that.
Okay, Alison, do you want to jump in there?
Sure. I think the short answer is we don't know yet. We don't know what the roles are going to be and what the skills are going to be and even what the strategies are going to be. And Rudy said, the mindsets are changing too. And right now we're in the middle of this profound transformation. We're not finished with it yet. Everybody's still in experimental phase. The clients don't know what they're doing. Like we need to be patient. And I saw a lot of comments in the Q&A about driving the conversation and representing the industry, and that's all true, and that's what associations are really good at. But in terms of the individual skills that are needed, we just don't know yet. Like GALA's launching this month or next month an AI use case special interest group, because we want to talk about how are you actually implementing the technologies? Are you using it in this and that and the other thing? How's that working for you? What kind of staffing do you need? What kind of skills do you need? And we're just figuring it out. So I think there needs to be some patience and open-mindedness as well. I'll stop there.
Just commenting quickly, because we had an event in Helsinki last year, and a presentation from GGT popped up a slide, and there were a whole range of new skills that are possibly going to come on stream, like prompt engineers, unthinkable when I started out in this sector. Jill, you've been very patient. And John there. So I recognize John and Jill. Can we have Jill first, ladies first?
Thank you. So couple points. Alison hit it on the head when she said, some of the largest companies in the world, tech companies, are figuring this out now, believe it or not, meaning within the localization space, in translation space. So the one thing I would say is from our standpoint, from Women in Loc, for example, we're having, it's free. It's March 25th. So next week at 5 p.m. CET, there is a 65-minute presentation from an AI researcher that it's called Gen AI from Prompt to Performance. So it's about writing good prompts, prompt engineering. When we hear prompt engineering, a lot of people thought, oh, you have to be an engineer. That's not what that means at all. It's a fancy term, but you can learn this. And so it's real use cases that are going to be shared. And so I think the biggest thing is we have to be patient, but I would say be curious, learn everything you can. You never know what's actually going to happen too. And try to be positive, no matter where you are at this stage in your career, and try to learn as much as you can. And I will say from my own company standpoint, last year, when this was pretty much, we started hearing all about it and weren't sure, I'm saying early 2024, everyone got an AI goal in my own company that we had to write. And it was part of our, it was monitored and part of our review and everything. And I think I learned just so much and kind of got excited about it and realized what you can do. Yes, believe me, I'm in sales. It affects all of this. Adaptation affects your bottom line, but I'm hoping that it can grow somewhere else. We can learn, we can adapt, and that more content might be able to be localized, for example, that has been sitting on the sidelines forever. That's all I'll say. Ever an optimist, but also a realist, I will say.
John, did you say during your section of the presentation that freelancers are using AI increasingly?
Yes.
Or did I imagine that?
No, I did say that, and it's in the data. Because one of the things I wanted to respond to was Heike's point about not hating AI or not hating technology. I think there's a general misconception that independent professionals or freelancers hate technology. That is not true at all.
Not true.
They have adapted to every technological change which has happened. What they hate is the way it is instrumentalized against them, the forcing their rates down and things like that. So that's where the anger and the frustration and the reaction against it comes. It's not the technology itself. They use it. They're very adept at using it. One of the things that comes across in all the ELIS surveys that we've done, which we didn't talk about today because we didn't have time to put it onto the slides, is the amount of CPD, continuing professional development, that freelancers are doing. And every single year, the biggest subject that people do CPD on is technology and improving their tech skills and how to use these technologies and so on and so forth. So even if the universities aren't able to teach everything, when you're out there in the market requires you to learn and adapt and acquire these new skills. So you will be doing lifelong learning, which is something that Christos already mentioned. And then one other thing I want to say was to address Alexander's point about this mismatch between people coming from a language background and not realizing that so much technology is involved. As you know, we've been developing these visibility campaign materials for teenagers thinking about getting into the profession, for their parents, for their teachers. And there's a lot of information in there which explains the amount of technology which is actually being used in the modern profession. There's a lot of information there about AI as well, to make people more aware that, okay, it's not just about language, it's about language, but using technological tools in order to achieve specific objectives. So hopefully when we get that information more out there among the general public, and we've already started the process now of translating it into different languages, that more people will have access to that information and that knowledge. And so that mismatch between expectations and reality when you get to university will be slightly lessened in the future.
That's great news. I just pick up a comment also from Miklos Ban, who noted something that Proford, the Hungarian Association, and the Hungarian freelance community developed a high-level agreement on the processes between freelance community and companies. So there's a model out there, just picking up on the comments you made about how rates are being depressed and how fairness needs to come into the equation. Alexander, you've been very patient. Do you want to come in with a comment?
Yeah, thank you for all your answers. About what John said, that's really interesting. I didn't know. I think it's a great idea because, I just wanted to clarify. When I mentioned the different profiles and so on, I wasn't being negative. In fact, I'm even more interested about these technologies than translation itself. I just meant to say it because I was trying to find an answer to why there were less and less students in our studies, which is something I noticed myself too. And so I think it's a great idea, what you mentioned there, John. Because, it was pointed out in the surveys that students and teachers are struggling to find internships, but in one of my internships, it was the opposite. It was the head of terminology who told me she hasn't had interns in a few years, and she would love to have more, but she isn't getting any. There were only 3 students studying terminology in my year, which is apparently way less than before. So yeah, I was saying that because maybe that's why.
Thank you for that. Diego, you want to jump in?
I came last, so I don't want to go before someone else. I saw Christos and Alexander, maybe even first.
Okay, Alexandra, we have a comment, by the way, complimenting your glasses, Diego. I thought I might just add that into the mix.
Thank you.
Are you on a commission as usual? Okay, let's have Alexandra. You've got a burning comment.
Not burning, but the future will be really the mixed masters, for example, because in Vienna we have a mixed master, which is really language technology, which means that linguists and IT specialists are put together after an entrance exam, and they can study language technology, which is also for the group dynamic very important, because as you said, as Alexander said, many of our students believe that loving languages is plenty of it for doing our courses, but that's not the case. And I think as soon we have, now it's the 3rd year we are running this program, and we see that it is a success, still small groups, but people realize that the two disciplines as a combination are the winning team. And I think that's one of the winning programs for the future.
Thank you for that. And I've just mentioned placements. The EUATC will definitely be playing a part in advertising companies that will take on placements. So we'll do our part. Christos, thank you for staying on. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I had difficulty finding how to raise my hand, so in the end I found it. Thanks. Look, first of all, let me say that we are employing within the EU institutions close to 4,000 translators. Point 1. Point 2, this need will stay because we're a public administration. And within all of the institutions that we work, we will continue to need to translate legislation, directives, policies, and so on. So the need for translators will always be there. So that's at least in the public administration context that we operate, 4,000 translators between the various institutions of the EU. The second point I wanted to mention is that we are publishing competitions to recruit people, as from this year, on an annual basis continuously. This is a strategic decision we took a few months ago. As we speak, we are running 8 language competitions, language combinations, and we will be doing this on a rotating basis so that we complete within 3 years the cycle of all 24 EU official languages. So that means that we are covering all languages within EU with competitions for people, for graduates, for people that would be interested, professionals, to join us in the midst of the translation community in the EU institutions. So that need will remain. So that's the first thing that I wanted to make sure that everybody understands. Opportunities exist. Opportunities will continue to exist, especially in public institutions like us, where, and maybe I need to say this again, for us, translation is a legal obligation. If we don't translate legislation, policy, and all the rest in all 24 languages, neither the European Parliament nor the European Council can adopt anything. So this need will continue to stay with us. The other thing I wanted to say is that discussions on technology, for me, like I said before, are non-discussions anymore. Technology is there, will always be there. It will continue to advance, and AI is here to stay. What we need to do is to refocus the discussion on what are the skill sets, what is the skill set that future linguists, language professionals, translators, or interpreters will need to assure a future-proof profession coming down the road. And that is not whether we will have AI or not use AI or other technologies. That is about what sort of specialization can I put on top of my basic translator skill sets, on top of my language skill set, on top of my technological savvy knowledge, digital skill set. And that is how people will be differentiated and become more employable. So we have different layers in the profile that we have now. We have the basic translation skill sets, we have the language skill sets, we have the digital skill sets, and let's stop this discussion about technology or not technology, AI or not AI, because it's preventing us from focusing on the last layer, which is the specialization. What sort of specialities and advantages or competitive advantages can students or other professionals gain from, for example, specializing in editing, in clear writing, in domain competencies, specialized translations in public health, or generally in energy files, and so on and so forth. And I'm only mentioning a few. I don't want to take the floor for longer, but I just wanted to share these feelings. Thank you.
I think I sat through one of your speeches in London 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Where you said AI has been a focus for the Commission for 5-7 years. So it's nothing new. People are catching up with the Commission these days. Right, now, Diego,
I mean, my comment might have become obsolete. I just want to go back to the academia. And the European Commission is doing a great job in connecting the EMT network with the industry. This I want to mention with the Lean Group that I'm part of. And the EMT universities are really doing the best to adapt. They have amazing programs. They are facilitating placements of students with all the difficulties of, over border placements, and they're doing an amazing job. I believe I represent ELIA here, that is an association of language companies. I do believe that we cannot assume to get students like 100% ready from the academia. This is not going to happen ever. And we need to have our own responsibility in training the students. Academia is, for me, is for education. And these are, borrowing from Beninato, academia is for education, and the company should play the role in training the students. The students that are now enrolled into translation programs, they really, how can academia cope with the pace that technology is advancing? It's impossible. We need to do our own job. I know many companies and many associations are trying to do that. With my company, we have developed a program for training the students or the professionals, and I know other companies that are doing an amazing job in that. This is our own responsibility, and we should stop complaining about students not being ready for us. We should do our own part. That was my comment.
I wonder whether, we've got in Kalisa, but can Valentin, I don't know whether you'd like to comment on some of these points that have been, your next gen, you're a fine example of the next generation.
Yeah, what I remember the most is what Alison and Jill said, I think, that actually it's hard to foresee. And yeah, that's also what I think, because I cannot, it's hard for me to have an image of the exact job I'm gonna have, because probably maybe it doesn't exist yet. I don't know, maybe some of you are having job that didn't exist when you were studying, and yeah, it's hard to foresee. And I must admit that, so I'm actually done with my master's degree, and I'm still studying this year because I'm taking 2 other focuses, as we say. And one of them is in teaching. So, it's a bit of a backup plan, but the goal would still be, like, the best case scenario would be to find something in the industry, and if not, then a part-time job as teaching, and then part-time freelance translator. And I think it's one of the way to have both stability and still be in the industry.
Make sure you join Fit Europe. Now, Inka-Lisa, you had your hand up. You're going to say something.
Yes. I'm not sure whether I was allowed to do that, but I wanted to conclude this, and also wanted to say to Valentin that you're absolutely right. I mean, you might not know where you end up, but you have a lot of skills that will certainly help you, and that has happened to a lot of us. We didn't know. And then there was something that enabled us to find work. But I wanted to conclude with the skills, indeed, because at European level, because we all know it's a special situation in our times, and Europe wants to step up also, not only the translation profession, but Europe wants to step up. There are some flagship projects, and one of them is the Union of Skills. And this is building up knowledge and repositories of skills that are needed so Europe can face all these challenges. One of them is, of course, AI. And I've been a little bit involved in it, and I want to promote one of the initiatives, me and my interpreter colleagues. I'm not sure they are here to listen, but certainly agree with me that we would like to promote the Knowledge Center for Translation and Interpretation, where we plan to have all the resources and information on skills that are needed, and also the project that John mentioned, which is about visibility for the profession, informing people before they study before they start their studies, what is implied when you become a translator, interpreter. I think there's audiovisual translation also mentioned. So all these profiles, and also mentioned to the new profiles. So stay tuned, and please go and Google, it's KCTI, as we like to call it. But we already have some things there, but we plan to have also career corners where people can learn about professions and ask about things. But for and foremost, I would like to build it as a place where you can also find about the skills and test your skills for translation. So that was what I wanted to say, and now I give it the floor back to Jeffrey.
I don't know. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the comments. Are coming so thick and fast. It's hard to keep up with all of them, and I'm going to need your help here, Inka-Lisa. But I wonder whether actually I don't know what our end time is, but we've got a lot of people still tuned in, nearly 200 people still on the line. So it's I don't want to end this prematurely, but I just wondered whether we ought to just make our wonderful interpreters, who are getting on the spot training and getting paid for it, and give them some accolade. Heike, do you want to say a few words about our interpreters? I apologize, everyone. My unfamiliarity with the Zoom platform for webinars made sure that no one heard anything for the first 10 minutes. But Heike.
Yes, of course. And maybe the interpreters want to switch their cameras on, and you all keep your cameras on. I'm afraid I think we have to close the session, Jeffrey, because we have to end at 12:30. I'm fully aware that we have a lot of questions still sitting in our repository, but I think we won't be able to deal with all the questions now. Maybe have an extra session, so we have to think about it. It was really overwhelming and a very inspiring and lively session today. So I will keep my closing remarks very short, but I really wanted to say a big thank you to all the presenters, the panelists, the interpreters, and not to forget you out there watching this Translating Europe workshop broadcast. You have chipped in with so many questions and insightful comments. You gave us a very cool direction in this discussion section, and you made a massive contribution to this event. So maybe it's a bit unfair to single out any one individual, but without the driving force of Rudi Thierry, the ELIS head of research and former EUATC president, there would be no survey. Of course, he's not done this on his own. ELIS is a wonderful example of a language industry collaboration, which is also fostered by the European Commission and the Lind Expert Group, and also sponsored by the European Commission. So I would like to mention our partners, GALA, ELIA, Fit Europe, EMT, and yeah, you were all wonderful, and I thank you so much.
Women in localization as well.
Women in localization. Oh, Jill, sorry, please. You will get an extra round of applause. Sorry for this.
Of course, thank you.
Being a woman in localization myself, I really shouldn't forget about this very, very important organization.
Can I just say, just remind people, the slide deck and the full report will be available after this event from the ELIS website. That's elis-research.org. Those of you who've been popping in the comments and questions, can I have a certificate? If you look in your inbox, I sent everyone an email before we started. There's a link to send it direct to me. I promise I will deal with them. Everyone who needs a certificate will get one. But thank you very much, all our panelists, Rudi, John, Alexandra, Hassan, everyone, Jill, and most of all, Christos. Thank you so much for staying on to the bitter end. We really do appreciate your participation in this. And here we have some of our wonderful interpreters. Thank you so much, guys, for everything you've done. We're getting lots of compliments on the work you've been doing. So you've done a brilliant job. Thank you very much.